Well, hello everyone, and welcome once again to Mobile Developer Day. Everyone having a good time so far? All right, awesome. So we're here to introduce you to the tools that Parse makes available to developers to accelerate your development cycle. My name is Christine Abernathy, and I am a developer advocate on Parse, and tag teaming with me is?
I'm Bear. I'm also a developer advocate on the Parse team.
All right, great. So she's going to come by in a little bit and finish out the talk. And so what I'm here to talk to you is about creating tools with app, and we're going to do that by building an app. So if you go to this GitHub URL, you'll be able to find the app if you want to follow along. And we're going to walk you through building an iOS app and take you through the different steps that are available. So everyone who is at this event should have received a Parse account if you didn't already have one, and that'll allow you to kind of get started with creating an app ID if you want to actually get the app running. Let me leave that on just for a little bit if everyone gets it. And alongside, we're also going to be adding Facebook integration. So if you don't already have, say, a Facebook developer account set up, go ahead and do that as well if you want to run the app. So this is what the app actually does. It's a simple app. It's a photo contest app allowing people to both enter a photo if they want to participate, and also go ahead and, say, vote on particular contest entries. And through this creation of this simple app, we're going to actually walk you through a lot of the key features that Parse provides to developers. So let me quickly actually show you the app in action. So let's switch to the mobile demo and get this running. And even if you see my code, I am going to change it. So here's the app. So we allow users to log in through Facebook. And once they log in, at Facebook, you're presented with a permission screen with the permissions that the app is requesting. Nothing looks too scary. I go ahead and click OK, and it brings me back to the app. And once I'm in the app, I can do a couple of things. First of all, I see what the title is for the contest. It's called Awesome Bites. I can go ahead and click on Add Your Entry. Awesome Bites. I don't know what that's about, but I'm going to add a photo, use the camera, take a picture of some folks here. Click Use Photo. Then at this point, I'm going to click Save, and I see a progress indicator. It's saving the entry up to Parse. At that point, I get a confirmation, successful. Click OK, and then I can come back to the main menu screen. At this point, I can go ahead and vote on the contest. See, I got my photo right up there, along with the name of the contestants. I'm not feeling too lucky, so I'm just going to vote for myself. Click on Save. Once I click on Save and say OK, I get back to the main login screen. The other thing that we're actually going to showcase is the fact that admins can come and kind of re-engage users. So let's go ahead and kind of simulate what that would look like. Let's go ahead. So the situation is that perhaps you want to re-engage users and have them come back and use the app if they haven't in a while. So the admin could probably send a push notification, which is sent, and then you see a push notification showing up saying contest ending, last chance to vote. When I click on that, it opens up the app again. Let's go this. And then I can always log out of the app. So those are the key features that we have in our app. And it's actually, as I said before, it's going to highlight a lot of the key functionality that Parse offers to allow you to create your apps really quickly. Let's switch back to slides, please. So that's the app. So what is it that Parse offers? So these are the pillars. We want to take a lot of the kind of the boring stuff out of creating apps for you. We know that a lot of developers, your unique contribution or what makes your app unique is not all of this boring server-side handling push notifications. So these are the pillars that Parse provides. We've got Parse Data, which allows you to store data on the cloud. We've got social, the ability to send push notifications and set that up real easily. Cloud code, hosting, and analytics. And we'll be talking about each one of these as the talk progresses. And to help you with each one of these, we provide native SDKs for all the different platforms that we support. For example, we've got iOS, Android. We've got Windows for game developers. We've even got a Unity SDK, JavaScript for web developers. And we even have a REST API. So for whichever platform that you're thinking on developing, we've kind of got you covered. Actually, I want to quickly ask, how many people out there have never used Parse before? Show of hands. That's a good amount. So for those who are actually very experienced, and a lot of this will be familiar to you, but just keep your ears open, you might pick up some nuggets. So I am going to be primarily talking about Parse data and social. And we are going to be developing this app. As you saw, it runs on iOS. And these are the different classes that we're going to be covering as we go through this. We've got PF object and PF user. Those represent kind of like the users and the different objects that are used. PF installation is related to push notifications. PF query, once you've got your data in there, how do you get it out? We also have PF file if you want to store really large blobs of data. PF file is what does that for you. PF analytics allows you to measure, and Bear's going to cover that in more detail. We also have 2 UI components that make it very easy for you to add things such as PF login view controller for login, or PF query table view controller if you want to display query results in a list. So that's what I'm going to be walking through. And I am going to be covering Parse data and social, as I mentioned. And the first thing that we were thinking about as we now go into how we built this app is we started thinking about what is the data model for this app. As you saw, it's a simple photo contest that allows users to vote and also to enter entries. So there is a concept of user. So we have a class representing a user that has things like passwords, emails. We also have an installation class, and that installation class is related to sending push notifications, and that's represented inside of iOS code by PF installation. Contest, so when the user wants to enter a contest, we've got a contest object. It primarily has a title and the fact that whether or not the contest is active. And finally, entry. So when you actually save an entry, we've got a different entry class represented by a PF object inside of iOS. And it has the fields related to a contest, and the contest points back to the contest that the entry was for. We also have entered by, so it points back to the user who actually entered the contest. We have image representing the photo that was uploaded, and a score which gets incremented whenever somebody votes. So that's our data model and how we got started. And now we figured out, OK, how do we get up and running? So the very first thing that seeds the whole thing is the contest. We need a contest in there. And this will kind of introduce you into how you actually create data and save data using Parse. So here you see how you can simply create the contest, which is going to kick off everything. So we want to set up contest, and we want to have a title, awesome bytes, and active set it to true. So you do that by just basically creating a PF object with a class name contest in this case. And then we're just going to add fields to it. So basically, everything in Parse is stored as sort of like a key value pair. So if you're thinking of it in iOS, it's like an NS mutable dictionary. And then you just save the keys that you want by setting that data. Then as soon as you just call contest save in background, that's actually going to upload the data on Parse. You don't have to worry about network requests or anything like that. At that point, you're kind of ready to go. You can then see the results in the data browser. So with every app that you create, there is a data browser that you can go and check out and validate whether or not the data was saved. So here we see that when the data was saved, we also got a unique ID. And we've also got a created and an updated timestamp as well. The data browser is also a very handy place if you want to kind of play around and debug things. And actually, when we did create this app, we went into the data browser and actually entered the information manually. So that's what we did to kind of get going. And now let's work through the rest of the app. And for that, let me switch back to the laptop, and we're going to walk through code. Right. So the way we started this app is we downloaded a starter project from Parse. So when you go to parse.com, you can download a starter project. And we have starter project for each one of the platforms that we support. And this allows you to get up and running and publish your first object and kind of understand how everything works. So we modified that starter project a little bit. We added a few things. We added the UI that is related to our particular project. And here's the nib file. And it just has a label for where we want to show the contest title. We have 2 buttons for voting and 1 for adding an entry. The other modification we added to the starter project is we brought in the Facebook SDK. You just go to developers.facebook.com /iOS, and you can download the code from there. The other change we made is that we created an app on Parse, and we also created an app on Facebook. So for the app on Parse, you actually have to initialize your SDK. And this is done inside of the app delegate by just calling the set application ID. That's going to initialize your Parse SDK. We also initialize our Facebook SDK by adding a few entries inside of our plist. And it's a little small to see, but basically we added a property for the Facebook app ID and another property for URL type, and that's used in the login flow. So that was basically what we've done in our app. And if we just kind of run this very starter project, this is a very simple, this is where we began, and it's just going to show a photo contest, not much going on here. If I click on this button, nothing's going to happen, and this is where we started off. So the first thing we're going to do is we want to add the ability for users to actually, I want to talk about one more thing. So the other thing that we did in terms of setting up a Facebook login, we're going to do that in a little bit, is we took the bundle ID. So if you go to your Facebook app settings, so if you go to your Facebook app setting, there is an app ID which you can get from there. But in addition to that, there is a bundle ID that you enter. And this bundle ID must match the bundle ID that is in your app. And that's just one final thing that you need to close the loop. So let's go ahead and go to the next step. We are going to add the ability for users to log into our app. And just because I want to avoid typing, I'm just going to set this up. All right, so I'm just going to set up so I have logic that now adds the login functionality. And here we're introducing you to the PF login view controller. So the PF login view controller is a UI component that allows you to very easily add in functionality for login. So you don't have to create your own forms for the users logging in. It takes care of a lot of different things, such as the callbacks when a login happens. And so the way you set it up is you first, in this case, we just set up an instance of a PF login view controller. And then inside of our custom initialization, inside of the init file in this case, is we just call, we initialize the PF login view controller. We set the delegate to be this class. And then we set some optional fields. There's a lot of different things that you can do with the PF login view controller. Let's just uncomment this and see what one of that would look like. And I've actually turned on all of the different options that are available. So here, you see that you can actually have a username, a password, a login. You can even have Facebook and Twitter login. You can even give the users the ability to click on sign up if they don't want to log in using Facebook or Twitter. So those are the different things that you can do. But for the purposes of this demo, we're only going to have Facebook login. The other thing that happens as part of the login, the sign-up process is the user goes to Facebook and we ask them for certain permissions. So here, for you can set the Facebook permissions and ask for the permissions you want. We're going to ask only for email because later on we're going to add some functionality in our app to invite users to come back if they have been dormant. So we're asking only for email. And at this point, when the user clicks on the login button, it goes to Facebook, it authorizes the user, then it comes back to your app. So for that kind of closed loop to happen, you need to add some code inside of your app delegate. And here you're making use of a class. And here the class is inside of your application. Let's go find this. Yeah, inside of the application did finish open URL. This is what's called whenever your app is opened. If you just make a call to PF Facebook util handle open URL, it's going to get the incoming URL that comes from Facebook, which if the user is properly authorized, it's going to contain information such as your access token and a few other things. And then what this SDK is going to do, the Parse SDK is going to take care of handling the sessions, creating the user, caching it as necessary, and then you'll have a valid user session. So that's the key part that you need to do to complete login. And as I mentioned before, when we set up the login, we actually set up this class, the main view controller, to be the delegate. So what does the delegate need to do? So there's a couple of things that we want to do when the user is logged in. First of all, we want to dismiss that login view controller. And also, we want to save some extra fields that get set up on user objects. So when the user is first logged into Facebook and then comes back to Parse, we need to set up a user object on Parse. And we want to add some extra field. And the actual login delegate that handles this is called a login view controller did login user. And it gets called in with the user that you got a PF user object. And what we're going to do here is we are going to query Facebook to get some extra information. So we make a call to this API, which Facebook provides a start from me completion handler. And inside of this, we are then going to set some information. So here, PF user current user is a pretty interesting one. This will get you a handle into the current user. And if it's going to be non-null if the user is valid. So once we get this user, we're setting some extra fields in there. We're setting a display name. we're setting a user Facebook ID. We're storing their email. We're storing their country. These are things that we're going to use later on in our app. But we're storing all these as extra fields on the user object on Parse so that if we want to manipulate them or use them later, we can. And then we're dismissing the view controller. So that's basically everything we've done in terms of the user login. So if I go ahead and run this, and I want to also run this and show now we've got the Facebook login only, and I have a test user running on a simulator, so I'm going to go through the same process, log me in. I have Facebook app installed on this particular simulator, so I was actually validated across Facebook. And then I'm able to see now my sort of logged in view. Let's jump into the browser, the data browser, so that you can see what this new user looks like. So here we've got a data browser for our particular app. And I had it before. I'm going to refresh it. So the new user that we just created is actually this top row. There's some extra information in there, some email, the country. These are things that we saved as extra field. And it's always easy to go to the data browser and see if everything's working correctly. So we've got user login added correctly. So that's step one. Step two is we've now shown you how you can create a user. The next thing we want to do is show you how you can, say, query an object. We want to enhance our app a little bit and allow users to go ahead and see what the contest title is. So for that, we are going to run a query whenever the app is launched and this view controller is shown. And in that query, we are going to read the contest, because right now we don't see any contest information. So we created a new method called read contest data. And in read contest data, we're doing a PF query. So a PF query is the way that you can get data out of Parse. And you just add in a class name. So here we're querying for information from the contest class. And then we're adding a few extra conditions. And it's just interesting to walk through some of these. So this condition, the select keys, that says I only want to get just the title information. So you could have an object which has a lot of different fields. And for the purposes of maybe not just optimizing what gets sent back, you can say pass in an NS array of only the fields that you want. We only care about the title. You'll also get back some of the built-in objects, such as the object ID and the timestamps. So that's one thing. And then the other thing we're doing is we are saying we only want contests where they're active, and we want it by descending order. And then once you've set up your query and the conditions, then you can actually execute it. And here we're only looking for one result, so we're calling the get first object and background with block. You can look for multiple results by, say, calling the different methods that are available in the query, but we only care about one. And if there's no error, then we're doing a couple of things. We are just saving the result, which is a PF object, and we're saving it in an instance variable called current contest. We're going to use that in a little bit. We're also setting the label that is going to be shown. So if we go ahead and run this app once more, instead of, we should now see a label show up there, and this is the result of the query. So we've now shown you how to set up a user and query. Let's go ahead and fill in the rest of it. We're now going to show you how you can make these buttons work by both adding your entry and voting in a contest. And this is going to introduce you to a few other things that you can do with PF objects and some of the UI components that we have available. So here we are going to go to the last step. So in this last step, we have now filled in what happens when you actually click on the button. So we've got a couple of new view controllers that come into play. So the new view controllers are the add entry view controller, and we also got the vote view controller. And the way we push this into our UI navigation controller is we initialize. We first check if we actually got a contest entry back, and then we have a custom initialization function we're going to look at in a little bit, and we knit it with contest. We pass in the contest, and last we just push it into a view controller. So for the rest of it, let's jump into the particular view controller. So for the add entry view controller, this is where the user can actually pick a photo and take a photo. And in this case, there's a lot of boilerplate logic in there that's around showing a UI image picker controller. We're not going to walk into that. We're just going to look at the functionality that is specific to Parse. So what happens is when the user picks a photo, there's going to be a save button that shows up. And when they click on save, we've got a method that we're going to walk through right now called save entry that gets called. And what save entry does is it basically does a few things. We're supposed to get the image, upload it to Parse, and also create a new entry. So the first things first is we've got an image that came from our UI image picker controller, and we just want to set up the data. So first you need an NS data representation of the image, and we get that first. And then here, this is a PF file. So PF file is another object that is very useful if you want to upload large blobs of data, which an image is good for. It's got a max cap of 10 megabytes, but that's the way that you can actually put images in there. You can put images, video, and different things that are large. So here we set up a PF image file. We pass in a name. That name does not have to be unique, because when it gets uploaded on Parse, it's going to be made unique. And then we just pass in the NS data. So we're doing something a little, here where we're actually saving things in a slightly different way. We're first saving the image and having uploaded to Parse, and then we're saving the entry. So here we're calling on the image file, save in background with block. And the reason we're calling this way is we want to make use of another way of saving, where you actually have the ability to see, to get back information of how it's progressed. If you notice, we had a progress indicator. So there's two things that are passed to this particular method call, but you can get a progress block here, and it gives you a percentage done, and we're using this to set up, we had a progress view, and we increment it so it loops through. So the rest of that's happening in the background block is when the user actually, when the image file is saved, and it's saved correctly, then we're setting up our entry. And this should be similar to what you saw with the contest. We just create a new entry object of type entry, and then we fill in the fields that we want. So we've got a couple of fields. We've got the contest, which is going to be a pointer to the object that represents the current contest. And this was passed into the initialization. We also have an entered by, and this is the user who's actually the current user of this app. And this is a pointer, so we're just going to pass in the object for the current user. And lastly, we pass in a reference to that same image file, which should now have been uploaded to Parse. And when that's all set up, we just call save in background with block. And then finally, we just show an alert if it's successful. So that's what we did to actually save this object. And then we run it. And let's go ahead and do this real quick. So now we've got, and these buttons should now be active. So I click on this. Because I'm running it in a simulator, I only have the options to choose a photo. That's this. And click on save. And at this point, when I'm clicking on save, it's saving the image file. And then at this point, it's creating the entry on Parse. I get a success OK. I can then go to my data browser just to verify that everything looked OK. At this point, this is the entry class that we're dealing with. We've got a new entry that just happened. And for this new user, here is the image file. If I'm curious to see if this is the right image, I click on this. This is a unique URL, which is the one that I just uploaded. In addition to that, we've got entered by, which points back to the same user that was created. And we also have the contest, which points back to that contest. So everything looks good. So let's go ahead and walk through the flow that happens when users actually have the ability to vote. So when users vote, we're actually going to make use of what we call the PF table view controller, PF query table view controller. So the PF table view controller is just an easy way for you to see data if you want to display it in a list. So any of you who have been using, say, a UI table view controller, it should look very similar. It's basically a subclass of that. But what it does is it abstracts a lot of things that you may need. For example, if you wanted to get each entry and then display that, it abstracts a lot of the things that makes it really easy for you to do. So to set it up, there's a couple of things you need to do inside. You first have to have a class that subclasses PF query table view controller, and then you set up a Parse class name instance to point to the table or the class that you want to query. In this case, it's entry. And then after that, you just need to do a few things. You can customize how you make the query, what fields you return, and you do that by overriding a particular method called a query for data, and we can walk through that. And then you can override a couple of things. You can override how you customize the view. So inside of, if you know the UI table view, you can have a data source, and in that data source, you can set up the view. So you do something very similar to set up what you want to see. In our case, what we want to see is we want to see an image representation, a thumbnail of the entry, and we also want to see the contestant's name. So let's go ahead and look at that. So the vote view controller, that's the one that we have subclassed the PF query table view controller. And the way the vote view controller is when the user clicks on the button, this is called. And it's got the same initialization function, which passes in the contest as a PF object. And then inside of the vote view controller, let's go ahead and look at what goes on. Inside of the initialization, this is the init with contest. We're doing more than just saving the contest that gets passed in. We're also setting up the PF query view controller. So here we set up the parse class name to entry. And then the other thing that PF query table view controller does, it also gives you a lot of different things. You've got this pull to refresh functionality built in, and you can definitely turn that off. We also have pagination. You can turn that on or off. You can set how many objects you want paginated. And for our case in this app, we're allowing users to actually pick more than one person and vote. So we're just setting a property on the table. And then the other thing is, when the user is voting, we're going to keep an array of who they've picked inside of this. So this is what we do in terms of initialization. Now let's set up the query that this table view controller is going to use. Query for table, that's the right name. So the query for table, this is where you can customize the query that is set up when this actual view controller is loaded. And to set that up, it's just a lot of boilerplate code will probably be made available for you when you subclass this. But a couple of things here. We actually want the contestant's name to come along for the ride when we make the query. So here, if you look at the information that comes from here, if you don't actually include the entered by, you're just going to get this data. But if you actually say include keys, that's going to get that data as well. So you just kind of save yourself another fetch that you might have had to do. So going back to the code, we say include key entered by. And then we also doing another filter. We're saying we only want entries that are tied to this particular contest, which was part of the initialization. So this is where you set up your query. So the next part is, let's customize what we want to be seen. So let's check this is the data source method, which basically sets up your view. So for each row of our table, which corresponds to, say, one object, one entry, what do we want to do? So each of the PF query table view controllers, there's a special PF table cell. And what it does, it actually does a lot of different things. In terms of certain things, like for the image view, all you need to do is, in an image view, it's got a property called file. And what you want to pass into that is, say, the photo. So in here, when you get an entry, there's going to be an image field which corresponds to the file. And then if you just pass this into the cell image view file, it's going to take care of downloading the image, doing everything in the background. You can even actually have a placeholder image that can be there in place. We haven't done that. But that's how you can show the image. Another thing that you can do is, here you can set the text that's displayed. So here we're setting the text by getting the entered by, which corresponds to a PF user object. And then we're setting the label's text to be the display name, which was saved when the user was first set up. So this is all that we set in terms of display. And if we go ahead and click on that vote on contest, you'll see all the other entries, and they're being cached and displayed. And the new one that was created here is available here. So that's how you actually set up the view controller. And you can definitely click and uncheck and choose to vote for more than one person. So the logic we have in here is inside of, we've got some delegate methods on the UI table view controller that do that. So one is the did select row at index path, and this is going to give you which row was selected. And another key thing is, inside of this special view controller, self object is always going to give you a list of all of the queries that were returned. And we use that to index into which row was clicked to find what the selected entry is. And then in this case, we're just adding it into the array of the votes that were chosen. Conversely, in the did deselect row at index path, we're doing the opposite, and we're just indexing into the selected entry and then just removing the object. So that's basically what we do for logging, and then the rest of it just kind of works. And you click on the save, it says could not save data. So this is actually a good thing to think about. So here I'm logged in as this user, save, a vote saved. But if I choose someone else, I get an error. So that's something that is, if anyone wants to think through why that's happening, and I can give you a clue that it's probably part of some of the security settings we have, it'd be interesting to see anyone have any idea. Does anyone know why that's happening? Yes? Yeah. So one of the key things that we had done earlier on inside of the app delegate, and I didn't point this out earlier, but inside of the app delegate, we actually put code in there. And the key code in here is we set up a default ACL which says that for any objects that are newly created, the public has read access, but only the user or whoever created the object has write access. So when I was actually trying to vote for a different user, I was actually hitting that point where I was trying to increment that user's key. So let's see how that increment was happening. So the increment was happening inside of this vote view controller. So in the vote view controller, when the user clicks on save, the save votes method is called. And I loop through all of the arrays that were actually selected that are saved in the self-vote selections. And then I'm using this kind of handy method called increment key on a PF object. And I can increment by any method. So you don't have to keep track of all the different scores. You can just click on this and increment by a certain amount. We've chosen 5. And we've batched all of our objects and saved them all in one shot. So if you have multiple votes, we save them all in one shot. That kind of saves your server call. Otherwise, you could just, after loop through here, after entry key, call save. But that might not be the best use of optimization. So when I save all in the background, in the case where I was the same user who created the entry, I was able to vote for myself, which is kind of rigged, but I wasn't able to vote for anyone else. So that's basically what we've done. I've walked through different ways that you can use PF user, PF objects, and save objects. And let's switch back to slides, please. So I'm going to hand it over to Bear, and she's going to walk you through some of the rest of the pillars to help you build a real awesome app.
Thank you. Great. So now that we've built this awesome photo contest app, and we assume that everybody in this room definitely wants to use it, right? You can vote for yourself a million times and win every single contest. We want to add some additional features to our app that's going to take it to the next level. And the first thing we're going to take a look at is push notifications. So Christine showed you a little bit earlier that you can send people a push notification to let them know that a contest is about to start happening. And we want to bring people who have been using our app back into the app so that they can participate. And if you can switch to the laptop, that'd be great. So the first thing you need to do to set up push notifications for iOS is add in your general settings tab here, you want to navigate to push notifications and then upload your Apple push certificate. For those of you who are writing Android apps, you won't need to put any additional credentials in here. But to make push work for our iOS app, we will upload a certificate here and save it. And we've already done that. The next thing that you need to know about push notifications is that they depend on a class in Parse called an installation. Christine touched on this briefly a little bit earlier. And what is an installation? An installation is a unique pairing between a device and an installation occurrence on the device. So if user A, me, downloads your app and opens it for the first time, that's going to create an installation object. If I delete your app and then I re-download it, that's a new installation object. If I update your app, that's not new. It's not a fresh installation. Now, if you want to keep track of users as they relate to installation objects, you might want to know, for example, if I have an Android tablet and an iPhone, and I'm using your app on both those devices, our suggestion is that you create a pointer relationship from the installation to a user, and that will make it a lot easier if you're trying to figure out who's actually receiving your notifications, how many devices they're receiving it on, and how you want to time those. So what you might notice is that we have 4 users here, but only 1 installation. And the reason for that is that we've been testing in the simulator. Simulator can't receive pushes, but luckily Christine has been generous enough to leave her phone up here so she can receive a push. There are a couple of different ways that you can send pushes. And one of them is client-side. So if, for example, you need people to be able to send push notifications to each other, you can send a push from the iOS and the Android and the .NET SDKs for those of you who are writing Windows apps. Now, you can also send it from the REST API and also through our push console here. So for those of you who have marketers who are working with you and want to be able to send pushes to all of your users, it's very easy to do on the web from the push console. So from your application dashboard, you can go to push notifications and then click send a push. Now, the great thing about this console is that it gives you some filtering options right here. So I can choose to either send to everyone or I can segment. So if we have created channels, which are basically a way to subscribe installations to groups, you can think of it as an object that stores a group of installations, I can choose a drop-down here, and I can pick a channel that I want to send this push notification to. I can also filter by whether or not I want to send a push notification maybe to somebody who created their installation in the last day. And I want to say, welcome to my app. We're so happy to have you. You can do all of this straight from the push console. Now, since we only have one installation, we're just going to go to everyone. You can also filter by device type right from the push console. We only have an iOS app right now, so we'll leave iOS checked. But if we also had an Android app and a Windows app, we would see alternative push notification displays here for different kinds of devices. And I think, yes, that is an iOS device. So I can compose a message here, and I can say, the next contest is starting in 5 minutes. And now I have some options for when I can send this. I can either send it right away, or I can schedule it for some specific time in the future. So say I want to send it at 5:30 p.m., but I actually have users all around the world. So I don't want to send a push notification at 5:30 Pacific and wake somebody up at 3 o'clock in the morning. So just by checking this box here, I can take care of sending the push in the user's local time, which is a really handy out-of-the-box feature to have. It means your pushes will be more likely to be received and not upset your users. But for now, since we want to show it to you right away, we will send now, and it's not going to expire. And then if you could switch to the mobile demo, that would be great. And I'm going to click Send Notification. And hey! So yeah, we just received that just a second ago. So when I open this up, it'll take me to the app. But Christine showed that earlier, and unlike many of the rest of you, I've already forgotten her code. So can we switch to the slides, please? So the next thing after push that's really handy to have for your application is Cloud Code. How many of you have heard of Cloud Code or know what it is? OK, not that many. So what Cloud Code is a way to run custom app logic on Parse's servers. This is handy if there's anything that you find sensitive. So if somebody unpacks your APK, and it would be a disaster if they found this code, you want to put that in Cloud Code. Or just anything that you want to run, say, after a user saves an object, or a long-running background job. So we can write this in JavaScript and deploy it to Parse, and it's fairly simple to do. If we could, in 1 second, switch back to my laptop, that would be great. So my terminal window is a little transparent, which makes it hard to read. So I've installed the Parse CLI tool, and that's the only setup I've done prior to this demo. If you're an iOS, if you're a Mac user, it's just one line of code. If you are a Windows user, we have an exe file that you can download. So all I'm going to do is call parse new and create a new folder that's based for this mobile dev day app. Call it mobile dev day. As a general rule, it's a good idea to map your folder names to your apps, because otherwise it can get quite confusing. So then the parse tool is going to create a new project in my main directory. It's going to add a config file and a few other folders. And then so it can associate my new code with a parse app, I need to add in my credentials. And if you have logged in with Facebook to Parse, or if you logged in with GitHub, you're going to need to explicitly set a password so you can create a new folder for the first time. And I am going to switch this for the mobile dev day app. And so now we're going to check out this new directory that I've created. So what's in it? We've got 3 folders: cloud, config, and public. We're not going to mess around with the configuration folder right now, but what we are going to do is check out this folder cloud. And in it right now, all we have is a file main.js. So let's open that up and take a look. Basically, all this does is defines a cloud function called hello that prints out hello world. So if I were to ping this function, all I would get back is hello world, which is useful, but not exactly what we want to do. Right now, for our app, what we want to do is create a background job that will loop over our database of users and check and see which of them have not been active in the past 7 days and send them an email. One of the greatest things about Cloud Code is that we offer easy integration with third-party services. So we have some pre-built modules for services like Twilio for sending SMS and calls, and Stripe for payments, and SendGrid for mail, which is what I'm about to show you right now. So I'm just going to I'm just going to pop this in here and walk you through what this cloud function does. Oh, noes. Well, OK. So we've got a new job called email and active users. And all it does first is set up SendGrid. This is a requirement for using the SendGrid module. And I also am going to take away my SendGrid credentials after this demo. And we're going to start up a new parse query for all of our users. And then we're going to figure out how many of them have not been active in the past 7 days. One thing we didn't show you is that in the application did become active method of our iOS app, we have a method that says, oh, no, OK, now update the user object to have a last active timestamp of right now. So we have a last active field set on our user object. So we're going to get boundaries. We want it to be before, we want them to have been last active more than 7 days ago, but fewer than 8 days ago, so that you don't get an email from us every single day that you're not active in our app. So we'll create those query constraints, and then we just add in less than, greater than. And then for each result in the query, we're going to just send an email. And it's from hello@mobiledevday.com. And it's a pretty simple email. Just subject is, hello, and we miss you. Please come back. So then at the end, we're going to set our success and our error response statuses. So we'll know whether the email was successfully sent. And then after all this is done, after we have iterated through all the results of this user query, we can say whether or not the job on the whole is successful. So that is either we emailed all the users successfully or something went wrong. So now that we've got this all in this file, the only thing that we need to do to get this code up to parse, and it might be useful to show you that it is empty right now. So if we go to our Cloud Code tab, which we will, you'll see that we don't have any files in here. So let's just pop back into the terminal and run Parse Deploy. Wow. Aha, it's my copy paste went poorly. All right. So rather than track down the error here, I'm going to jump into my other app that has this set up properly so I don't have to waste you guys' time. Oh, noes. Just kidding. I'm going to actually rectify this error live. Let's just delete all this. Thanks for bearing with me, everyone. Any of you who had to do a live coding demo, I know probably feel my pain. OK. Let's try that again. Ah! Parse is not the... Come on. There we go. Woohoo! So now when we reload this page, we'll see that now we have this background job ready to go. So we can move to schedule jobs, and we see that we don't have any jobs scheduled yet. So we'll schedule our first one. And actually, before we do that, we should probably fabricate some data to make sure that this is actually going to get sent to somebody. So let's go to the users, and we'll find me. This is me. And here's my last active field. So we're just going to pretend that the last time I was active in the app was on November 7th. Great. So now we have a user that we're actually going to notify. Back to Cloud Code. Let's schedule a job. So we will call this emailing inactives. And the job now here is email inactive users, which we uploaded and defined in that other file. And we want to start immediately and not repeat, though we could say that every day at 7 p.m. we want to email all our inactives. Right now we're just going to do this once. Schedule the job. And let's run now. Success. So now if I jump into my very limited view of Gmail, oh no, come on. anyday@gmail. Here we go. Yay, hello from Mobile Dev Day. So you can see this is the message we entered. We miss you, please come back. Now you can do a lot more sophisticated things with the SendGrid email. You can create templates so that this shows up a lot more beautiful and not just like plain text. But for the purposes of a demo, we want it to be as most straightforward as possible. So you can schedule multiple jobs. You don't just have to stick with one. And you can also write functions that are not meant to be standalone, long-running jobs. They can just be things that need to happen after save or before save. Cloud Code offers you a lot of flexibility to do some pretty cool things for your app. So can we jump back to the slides? Hopping over hosting for the time being, we're going to jump to analytics with a handy little animation. Yay! Animation. OK, great. So analytics are really useful. Many of you probably will not be implementing them in a hackathon. But later on down the line, when you want to have some information about how users are responding to your application, different features you're building, what's most useful, what's causing the most errors for people, analytics are going to become very important down the line. So there are a few things that you get with Parse built in. Can we hop over to the laptop again? If you navigate to the Analytics tab in your application dashboard, which you'll see in a second, if you navigate over to the Analytics dashboard, you'll see that there are a few things that you get right out of the box. And one of those is API requests. So when you click on API requests, you can actually do a more sophisticated breakdown of what you might want to know. So for example, if we're interested in seeing whether more iOS users or Android users are uploading photos to our contest app, we can filter by platform. Right now we only have iOS, but this would become meaningful later on. And you can also filter by what class they might be creating, so whether it's an installation or a user or an object. And you can also filter by request type. So if we want to see entries, and the request type would be create requests, now we can see who's creating the most entries, what platform is generating the most user content. And that's pretty cool, so we can save that breakdown. But one of the things that we might want to know is how people are responding to our push notifications, where they are, and whether there's a pattern in when they respond. So in our add entry view controller, you'll remember Christine walked you through this method, save entry, that gets called when people click the save button. And at the end, what will be really useful to know is once a save is successful, we want to find out where the person came from who responded to this push notification and actually uploaded a contest entry, and what day of the week it was. Maybe we see much higher engagement on Tuesdays, and we want to know why, or people are only active in our app on the weekends. All this is useful to know. So what we'll do is we'll get the current date. We'll format it to say what day of the week it is. And what we're going to do is we're going to pull the country information off the current user object and save that along with the day of the week to an NS dictionary object called dimensions. And then all we have to do is call PF Analytics track event. We'll give our event a name. In this case, it's contest response, and pass in that dictionary. And track event, just like something like save in background, doesn't require you to write any network calls. It will just kick off a send in the background. So then later, we'll be able to dig into information about what kinds of responses people are sending in our analytics dashboard. So here, we can decide to create a custom breakdown. And when we click the dropdown, we'll notice here that we have a field called contest response, because people have been using our app, and every time they successfully save an entry, there's some information about them. So we can, again, filter by platform. And then here you'll see that this is the custom dimension that I defined, day of the week. And we've got people responding on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Tuesdays, and Thursdays. And we can also filter by country, which we got a rough-grained estimate from Facebook. They have a field called locale that actually corresponds to what language you're viewing Facebook in, but it was sort of a coarse-grained view of where people might be coming from. So once we create this filtering, we can say save breakdown. And we might want to remove API requests, because otherwise you can't really see. But it looks like we got 5 whole entries saved the other day. And you can see, you can overlay these graphs on each other to see where you're getting the best responses, and think about how you can improve your app to make it more interesting, more exciting, more useful for people. One thing to note about custom analytics is that you can use up to 4 breakdown elements in the dimensions properties that you're setting, and they should all be strings. So that's a good aside to know about analytics. If we can hop back to the slides for one last demo. So the last thing we're going to cover is Parse hosting. And Parse offers 2 ways of hosting. You can host static files on Parse, or you can create dynamic websites using Express.js. We are not going to go into the weeds of creating dynamic websites on Parse right now, but we will show you how to create a splash landing page for our awesome photo contest app. So if you can switch back to my laptop, that would be great. So we're going to go back to this folder, and remember that we had this folder called public. So in public, if we take a look, we can see that there's a file in there called index. So when we open it up, we can just see that this is a basic HTML file that says hello world. Now I'm going to just modify a little bit my awesome Parse app site, and I am going to blind you guys old school with my favorite color. And right now, there's nothing. If you switch back to the Parse view of our files, you'll see there's nothing in there in our public files when we go to Cloud Code. So let's fix that. What we want to do is deploy this again. So we'll run Parse Deploy. Great. Now where did that go? What's public? Well, what we have to do next is we need to set up our custom subdomain on Parse. And we can do that by going to the settings portion of our application dashboard. And then when we click on web hosting, you'll see that you have the ability here to add in a custom subdomain. So let's call it mobile dev day and hope that's not taken. Great, it's not. And that means that immediately we can go to mobiledevday.parseapp.com, and you're blind. You're welcome. So if we want to make updates to that static file, we can just add whatever we want into this folder, and whenever you run Parse Deploy, all of that will be available on your subdomain for static hosting. Now, if you want to add a custom domain, you can with a pro account. You can set that up in the dashboard here. And if any of you have questions about setting up Express.js and how you can use dynamic websites on Parse, we'd be happy to talk to you in the office hours area over there. But right now, I'm the only thing standing between you guys and a snack. So thank you so much for watching our demo and bearing with me on some of the bumpier parts. And we'll be happy to talk to you over there. Thanks.